I've tried to quit. I've tried to turn on my microphone. I've tried to quit. I really have. But I just keep using. I've relapsed so many times now, I can't even remember them all. I tried biking to work, line drying my laundry. I voted. I gave money to 350.org. Everything. But my cravings to drive to Target and take vacations and use fossil fuels overpowers me every time. Heck, I even used fossil fuels on my way here this morning. So I have exactly, 2 hours of sobriety here. I'm desperate. I've hit bottom. I need help. Hi, I'm JD.
Hi, JD.
Yes, this combustion addiction thing is kind of tongue-in-cheek. There isn't really an addiction to fossil fuels. But there are some really striking similarities between addiction to things we think of as addictive, like alcohol and methamphetamines and opioids, and our obvious dependence on the use of fossil fuels. One of those is denial. What problem? I only drink on the weekends. Or it's just normal fluctuations in the weather, or it's sunspots, or you've heard all the various denialist arguments about climate change. Use comes to dominate the addict's activities. So instead of going to a movie, the alcoholic goes bowling where they can enjoy a beer at the same time. When's the last time that I did anything that didn't involve driving, plastics, or electricity that's mostly coal-powered around here? I've tried everything, and I just can't seem to stop. It feels hopeless. And here's a big one. Withdrawal from use of the substance hurts in some way. It costs something, or it requires substitutes just to get by, just to survive the withdrawal. And the biggest one of all, use of the substance continues in spite of obvious bad consequences. Believe me, the alcoholic knows that they're buying the booze with the rent money that was due yesterday. They know it. The meth addict knows that she hasn't eaten for a week and that her kids are running around neglected, that her body is decaying right before her eyes, and she uses anyway. I know that my fossil fuel use every time I get in the car is partly responsible for what happened in the Bahamas last month, for those refugees piling up at the border, for the war in Syria, for the burning of the Arctic all summer, this summer. I know that. And yet, I got in my car and drove here this morning. The use continues in spite of bad consequences. When I know that my behavior is harming myself and others, and I continue that behavior, I am in spiritual crisis. When I know that my behavior is causing harm to myself and to others, and I continue that behavior anyway, I am in spiritual crisis, same as any alcoholic or opioid addict or problem gambler. So bear with me. Let's pretend for a moment that our dependence on fossil fuels is an addiction, a mental illness of sorts, a spiritual crisis. One thing we know about addiction is there is no cure. The best programs out there are about 50% effective a year or two after you've started them. And those programs are 12-step programs and ones like Smart Recovery, which there's a Smart Recovery group in this church. 50%, that's not that good. But CPR, which we avidly teach people saves lives, that's only 12% effective. So in comparison, 50% is not that bad. So let's take a look at the 12 steps. Maybe they offer something to us with our fossil fuel addiction. Now, a couple disclaimers first. I cannot and I do not speak for 12-step programs either specifically or generally. I speak only for myself. At 12-step meetings, we share only our experience, strength, and hope. We speak from our own experience. We talk about what gives us strength and allows us to feel some hope in seeking some sanity in our lives. We don't give advice to other people in the meetings. We don't talk about other people. We don't vent about what so-and-so did this time. We keep it to ourselves. We keep the focus on ourselves. Another sort of warning is that the 12 steps of AA, where it all began, were written in the 1930s by Christian alcoholics. Don't get hung up on the God language. There's a bunch of God language in these 12 steps. And for some of you, that'll be fine. For others, it'll be like, I don't believe in that. Please remember that 12-step programs are not belief-based, they're action-based. And each of the 12 steps is an action that we can take to make our lives more sane and help us deal with the mental illness of addiction. Focus on the principles, the actions that are being brought out in each step, rather than on the language that's used to describe it. All right, ready to go? Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over fossil fuels, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 1 is where the denial ends. This is where we face facts. We face reality as it is. In my case with fossil fuels, this is where I recognize that my behavior is at odds with my values. My behavior is at odds with my highest values. A word that people often get hung up on here is powerless. It seems like this is saying we just throw up our hands. We can't do anything. But that's not quite what it says. It's powerless over. Powerless over something specific. In this case, fossil fuels. This is me recognizing that withdrawal is going to hurt. And there's not much I can do about that. I'm powerless over my dependence. I'm powerless over the fact that it's going to hurt to stop using them. Unmanageable. Is your life unmanageable? Kiva touched on that in her reflection. Not much yet. I mean, the weather's a little wonky, but we're not that far north from Ellicott City, Maryland, where they had 2,000-year floods back to back. And they are this week trying to decide which huge portion of their city business district they're going to bulldoze and surrender to the river. Millions upon millions of dollars. We also have Lyme disease that's increasing. Tropical invasives are coming into Pennsylvania. Our lives aren't completely unmanageable yet, but we can see it coming. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. This one is about humility. This is recognizing that I need help. I need help from a power greater than myself, like a community, like a church, like information about how the earth works. This is recognition that hope lies outside myself, that I can't do it alone. The problem is bigger than that. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God. This step combines humility with trust. In my case, this is trust that if I turn my life over to my values, if I actually lived in accord with my highest values, that those values have got me, that they're enough, that I can survive that, living actually with real integrity. Trusting that if I actually think globally and act locally, that works. So that acting on those highest ideals ideals is enough. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Well, this is where I compare my character to those values, unflinchingly, facing the facts about myself head on. In the case of an alcoholic, they might ask, what are the good and bad aspects of my character? Am I living in integrity with this disease? In my case, it's what are the environmental impacts of my lifestyle? Am I addressing that, or am I avoiding it or deflecting? How's my integrity is what I ask myself in this step. Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Where am I out of integrity exactly? Again, facing facts, but this time doing so out loud. Not in the privacy and the darkness of my own head, which we already know is mentally ill with this addiction, this dependence, but out in the light, in at least a partly public way, to at least one other person, maybe even to our community, to my community. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. For the addict, this is about letting go of the familiar and comfortable, diving off into a new way of living that's more raw, more real, but also extremely frightening. Am I really ready to face up to my part in the environmental destruction that's happening as a result of my behavior? It's gonna hurt. Am I really ready for that? Until I am, all my efforts are gonna be half measures. They're gonna be a sham until I'm really ready to live in integrity. Step 7, humbly ask God to remove our shortcoming. In my case, this is where I actively seek help from outside myself to remove the psychological barriers to true integrity. So I get ready in the last step. In this step, I actively go about trying to live in integrity. Together with my community and open to possibilities that I might not even know about, I seek a new way to live, knowing that I don't have all the answers yet. I don't know how to live fossil fuel free, but I'm actively looking for it. I'm actively working towards it as part of being healthy. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. This is the skeletons in the closet. You can't clean them out if you don't find out where they are and what they are first. Taking inventory of the harm I've already done. What has been my environmental footprint? What have I done that harms the earth or harms myself? Step 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Doesn't have to just be people. It can be an ecosystem, an environment, a planet as well. This step is about atonement for past wrongs. As somebody said from the pulpit a couple weeks ago, atonement can be pronounced at-one-ment. That's the essence of integrity. So this is where I actually clean out the closet. I get back into at-one-ment with the earth. I make personal reparations to the earth. Now, I know we live in a society where for some reason reparations are controversial. They're not controversial for me. If I hurt you accidentally or deliberately, it's on me to make it right. That's what reparations are. Making right the harms that I have done. I can't always do that. Sometimes it just makes things worse. This is the step where I endeavor to make personal reparations to the earth for the things that I have done to harm it. How? Well, we know there are small things. We can plant trees, plant milkweed. There's not much. But The question is, are we actively attempting to or not? There are big ways, too. Like if you have some money, you can buy land and put it in a conservation easement or something like that. The question is, are we looking or not? Step 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This is a guard against arrogance and entitlement. As new evidence comes along that maybe I'm hurting something I didn't even know about, I'm agreeing to myself, making a contract, a covenant with myself, to admit it, to recognize it, and to act on that. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with the earth as we understand it, praying only for knowledge of its will for us and the power to carry that out. This is about remaining conscious, remaining environmentally woke. This is me asking myself daily, what's the best I can do for the earth today? And it's personal, it's not political. Notice, you don't pray for so-and-so to be out of office after the next election. If prayer works at all, I don't think it works that way. Prayer is and ought to be personal. Praying only that when truth comes along, I will recognize it and have the courage to act on truth as it comes along. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Spiritual awakening happens when my behavior is in keeping with my values, when denial and fatalism are banished, when I see clearly and act with integrity. Until I have that, any message from me about how other people should live is a sham. It's an arrogance. I'm not there yet. I can't give away what I don't already have. 12-step programs tend to collect all these slogans. They're like short, pithy memes that help us deal with the 12 steps and apply them in our lives. I want to just mention 2 of them this morning. The 3 A's, awareness, acceptance, and action. And they're in that order for a reason. You can't do anything about a problem if you're not aware of it, so that has to come first. But then, once we're aware, we have a tendency, we in our society, I personally do, to go in 2 ways that are unhealthy. The first is to just go right to shame and guilt. I'm aware of this problem, I don't feel like I can do much about it, so I'm just going to feel guilty. And then I'm done, right? The other direction we can go is we can leap from awareness to action. I know about this problem, so I'm going to run out and I'm going to fix it. Well, it's more complex than that. It's more subtle than that. We can't really have our actions be effective and well-targeted if we don't accept reality as it is. In the case of environmental degradation, science plays a really important role in both awareness and acceptance. If we're not doing that middle step, our actions are going to be misguided and half-hearted. Another one that's really important for me personally is progress, not perfection. We in our society, but especially people from addictive, dysfunctional families, we tend to think in very black and white, all or nothing ways. There's actually a billboard on the turnpike put out by either the gas or the coal industry that is attempting to point out the hypocrisy of these progressive, liberal Hollywood celebrities that are all about fixing the environment, but they fly airplanes to their rallies. Well, how else are you going to get to the rally? We live at a time where we are dependent on fossil fuels. That billboard is just tapping into that very unhealthy black and white all or nothing thinking. I know there are many things that I can do to decrease my carbon footprint. And if I try to do all of them tomorrow morning, it's not going to work. I'm going to feel like a failure and I'm going to be a failure. Baby steps. We see the goal, we know where we want to get, and we make a change and we integrate it and settle into it. Then we make another change, we integrate it and settle into it. Progress, not perfection. Now, whether combustion addiction is real or not, whether it's an apt analogy or not, it seems to me that humbly getting right with my values, working locally with others, facing facts, and becoming truly willing to change, these are all good steps towards a better life and a better world, no matter what else you think about this morning's service. Whatever you do think about this morning's service, I hope that one thought takes root in you the way it has taken root in me, and that it simmers for the next few days. And that is, when I know that my behavior is harming myself and others, and yet I keep doing it, I am in spiritual crisis. And I cannot ignore that. I have to address that somehow. I don't know how yet. Please note that if you or someone you love suffers from real addictions, from addictive substances or activities, please don't base your decision to seek help from 12-step programs or Smart Recovery or any other addiction treatment programs out there based on anything I said or didn't say this morning. This has been my experience, strength, and hope, and I speak only for myself. Thanks for letting me share.